Okay, welcome everyone. We're doing a concurrent degree joint information session and Q&A for social welfare program and Asian American studies. My name is Oliver EK. My pronouns are he, him. I do our admissions and recruitment for both our MSW program as well as our PhD program in the Luskin School of Public Affairs. I'll turn it over to my counterpart in Asian American Studies.
Thanks for the introduction, Oliver. My name is Justin. I am the current student advisor in the Department of Asian American Studies. Right now, I'm looking over the graduate and undergraduate advising duties in the department. So yeah, happy to be here.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Okay, here is Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany. I think you're mute. I don't know if there we go.
Hi.
How you doing? Okay, so Tiffany, we're just going to talk about kind of the program from both angles, and then we'll move into a Q&A with you. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, all right, Justin, you want to start us off?
Sure, yeah. So for our program, I'm assuming the good amount of folks here are interested in applying to the program. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the application process, walk you a little bit through like what the requirements are, and then also do a little brief overview of what the actual program entails. Just very general. Trying to keep it very general. And then if you have any specific questions, you can answer that in the Q&A or you can reach out to me. So for this part, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So let's see. Everything look good? That's it. Oh gosh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so if you go to our website, I'm going to be using our website a lot as my main resource for my brief presentation today, just because the majority of our admissions information can be found on our website. So our website is asianam.ucla.edu. If you go here, go ahead and click on the graduate study tab, and then below it, you'll see the admissions page. So brief overview of the requirements. The deadline is going to be this December 1st, 2023. That's typically the deadline every single year for our program. GREs are not required, so please don't send those in. Those are not going to be accounted for in your application if you're applying to our program. So we just say don't send it in. We require 3 letters of recommendation. Those 3 letters of recommendation, one question that I get asked a lot about the nature of those recommendations is that we advise our students and our applicants to submit 2 who are from people who you have done like academic work with or like research, any kind of like research with. If you have had like a research advisor, if you've worked closely with a faculty on a research project, we advise 2 of those letters of recommendation be from those kinds of individuals, and then 1 recommendation that can be from any other person. I mean, you can really get those letters of recommendation from, if you want to do all 3 faculty, then you can do that as well. That's just what we recommend: 2 faculty and then 1 other person who can speak to other attributes and your other strengths as an applicant. And we only look at 3 of those letters of recommendation. So we only ask for 3, we don't ask for any more. At least for our program, we don't look at any more than 3. And then we also have our statement of purpose, our writing sample, and then your official transcripts. For those of you who are graduating from an institution where they grant bachelor's degrees, so like other universities, basically anything other than like a community college, at least for the official transcripts, we do ask that they are hard copies, so those have to be mailed to us. And then all the information for this, again, can be found in terms of the address and stuff like that, can be found on our website. Let's see here. And then if you keep scrolling down, we have just, again, more information about the application deadline, the admissions requirements. Here you can see more information about the nature of the statement of purpose, the writing sample, letters of recommendation, all the stuff that I've been talking about, basically. Here's the department address for your transcripts, jury scores. Yeah. Let's see. We have information on international applicants. We typically don't get too many of those just because we're Asian American studies. But if, every once in a while we will get international applicants. So this has more information about that. And yeah, there's also the graduate division. I'm sure if I'm sure some of you have already started your application. We also refer back to the graduate division, or what's now called the Division of Graduate Education. If you want to look on their webpage, we also have the official information for the application there as well. And then yeah, more FAQs, more nitty-gritty stuff if you want to check that out as well. But yeah, I'm just going to keep referring you all back to the website just because that is where we keep our information up to date, at least for the Asian American Studies Department's side of things. And then yeah, and then so that's the admissions sort of information. In terms of the actual like program itself, so our program again, if you just click on the graduate study tab on our website and you scroll down, it'll give you again just all the information you need to know about what the actual program of the MA program entails. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to our MA requirements. So 11 courses total when you're admitted into our program. We are a 2-year program. If you were to apply to our program, I think if you were to get into the degree program, the concurrent degree program between MA and MSW, the structure of it, typically how it works is that it will be 1 year of the Master's in Asian American Studies school coursework, basically, and then the other 2 years, so basically year 2 and year 3, your subsequent years will be focused on coursework within the MSW program. And Oliver will talk a little bit more about that. So yeah, typically, students in the past and our current students who are enrolled in both in the dual degree program will finish, or at least we strongly recommend them to finish their MA, their master's, their Asian American coursework in the first year that they are admitted into the concurrent degree program, and then that allows them basically to have their latter 2 years to focus on their MSW. And then, yeah, again, we have more specific information about the joint degree program here. And yeah, I kind of sped through that a little bit, but yeah, if you have any other questions, you can also, I'll give my contact information at the end as well and share in the chat. So I think that's going to be it for my part, Oliver. I'll hand it back to you. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Justin. All right. Cool. So I dropped Tiffany's bio in the chat so you can kind of see her background and what she's up to now. She'll yeah, and then as soon as we finish kind of my portion, we'll move into Q&A. So if you have questions, kind of think about what you would like to ask her, so that yeah, we could be ready for that. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our program, and then we'll kind of go into the admissions requirements. They're very similar to Asian AM, so makes it a little easier for applicants. So we're a 2-year program as well, and we kind of base our program on areas of concentration. So we have 3 areas of concentration: the child and family well-being. So that's working on kind of case management for children and families, trauma, child welfare and policy, health and mental health across the lifespan. So this is kind of geared towards people who want to become therapists. So you could work, but it spans the lifespan. So you could work with children, you could work with the elderly, people with substance abuse issues, domestic violence, working on those things. And then our third AOC is it's more macro social work. So it's called social and economic justice. So this is for people who want to kind of advocate for certain populations, or do work at a nonprofit, work on criminal justice reform, usually like reform, things like that, and advocating for specific communities. So that's kind of how we break our program down. And when you're in the joint program, it doesn't really matter which one you choose. You can actually do any of them. So there's no limit to what you do. And within the program, you do kind of get a meso experience, because you'll be you'll be in an internship, and then you'll be in the classroom as well. So it's kind of where theory meets practice is kind of the way that we've structured our program. Okay, so admissions criteria, very similar. If you're well, I mean, if you're an international student, then we do need the TOEFL or IELTS scores, a couple essays, and when you apply to our program as a joint student, it's just one application. So we're both our applications are on the UCLA Division of Graduate Education website when you apply to programs, and there's an option where you can actually choose the joint program between Asian American Studies and Social Welfare. And then what you want to do is in your essays, you want to cater it to both programs. Rather than writing 4 essays, you can just combine the essays and just use them for both programs. So how do you want to combine both degrees? Kind of what do you want to do with them when you're finished with the program? So that is kind of how that works. And then just kind of employment, just kind of people have an idea of kind of what that will look like after the program. So basically, Luskin graduates take on leadership roles and affect change as practitioners, researchers, and policymakers. So for social welfare specifically, we're in a school with other departments, but for our department, 100% of the respondents that we reached out to are employed, and this is within, I want to say 6 months. So 93.5% are employed full-time, and then about 6.5% part-time. It's a really good time actually to go into social work because there's an acute shortage, especially if you want to go into therapy. There's an acute shortage of behavioral health practitioners. So it's almost guaranteed that there'll be something for you once you finish the program. And then so that is that. And then we have just kind of a breakdown of kind of where people end up, just so you can get an idea of kind of where the people that come through our program end up. So, I mean, we do have people that in the joint program that end up at the Asian Pacific Counseling and Treatment Centers, for example, Japanese Ministry of Finance, but basically all of these places. So there's different places, hospitals, there's schools, art culture project there, associate clinician, therapist, case manager. So there's a lot of clinical therapists. So there's a lot of a school social worker, which is a nice one as well. You can be a school social worker, within the school system to help kids, especially now there's a lot of behavioral health problems due to COVID. So there's a lot of that right now. So there's a lot more investments being made, both federal level and state level, to kind of expand behavioral health. We actually just received like a $3 million grant to expand our behavioral health program. So yeah, again, it's a really good time to get into this particular field. And this is just kind of ballpark what you'll be looking at. Again, I mean, most of our people stay in California. Most of the people that come through our program are from here, born and raised, or they decide they want to kind of settle down and build their career here. So about 87% work in California. And then one of the things that people think when they think of social work is low pay. 74% of survey respondents fall between $50,000 and $80,000. And then over 54% reported being within the $70,000 to $120,000 range. So you can make a good living, especially if you go into therapy and you get maybe even if you get licensure for LCSW, and you so there's definitely money to be made in social work, and there's other opportunities that you'll have with both degrees, being able to combine those things. Okay, yeah, and I'm just going to throw my email in here. So if you have any other questions, you can always email me if you have any questions about the process. Our deadline is later than Asian American Studies, but you want to make sure if you're applying to both programs that you apply by December 1st. You always want to apply by the earlier deadline between the programs. So if you're thinking of applying, make sure to get your application and your materials in by December 1st. Okay, any questions about Asian Am or social welfare before we turn it over to Q&A session?
Can I ask about the letter of recommendations? Since there needs to be 3 for Asian American Studies and 3 for the MSW, and I know the MSW program was asking for 1 academic, 1 professional, and then 1 up to you. Would it be 3 total applying to both programs, or would it be maybe 4 because you want perhaps 2 for?
Yeah, it would be 3. Yeah. So basically, the Division of Graduate Education, once you submit your application, they basically make a copy of it, and then both departments get a copy for review purposes. So, I mean, we usually say if you can get at least 1 academic, that's the preference. You can do 2 academic too, though, if you want. So you can kind of you can probably go by Asian American studies guidelines if you like. We're pretty flexible in terms of letters of recommendation. We just say, make sure to ask people that know you well and that like you, because we've had letters that come in where they're like, I don't know why this person asked me to write them a letter. And they like send that in. It's like a nightmare. So we have to go back to the applicant and be like, hey, can you get another letter? Just to kind of give them a better chance of admission. So, to make sure that it's someone that knows you well and that likes you when you start asking for letters. But 3 total is all you need.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So in the chat, Madison had a question. What do you mainly look for in an applicant for the MSW program? Actually, this will probably be good for Justin as well. But for us, we don't have a work requirement. Some programs you need a year or 2 of experience to even apply. We don't have that. So we do a holistic process. So we want to know who you are as a whole person. That's kind of what we're trying to do, even though it's really difficult to do that in a digital format. But that's what the essays are for. So the essays, for our purposes, are your opportunity to tell us who you are, what you've overcome, where you're coming from, where you want to be. And it's your opportunity to actually get the faculty member who's reading your application to get them excited about you, because our committee, they read like 80 applications. So if you're unlucky number 79 and they're like about to fall asleep, that's your opportunity to kind of grab their attention, get them excited about you, make them feel like they know who you are, know where you're coming from, and want you in the program. So we're looking for well-rounded people. So academically, for us, psychology and sociology, gender studies, ethnic studies are really good inroads to our program. And then experience can be volunteer. There's the crisis text hotline. If you don't have experience, that's a pretty low entryway into getting experience. There's not a huge commitment to doing that. And it's by text. So it's actually a pretty good way to get some experience if you need that. And then your letters of recommendation, and then your essays. So but Justin, I don't know if you want to add anything on your side.
Yeah, and I thought, very similar in Asian American Studies, again, holistic approach. And every admissions committee is different, but I think at least for my time here that I've seen, something that I want to emphasize is the writing sample. Our writing sample is important for our faculty when they're assessing admissions committee, because we want to know that you're going to work on a project. It's within the 2 years, the 2 or 3 years that when you're in our program, right? Like they want to know that you have this idea that can grow within those 2 amounts of years. So I would say spend a lot of time on that writing sample, or maybe not a lot of time, but you want to make sure that it's crafted, that it's well written, that it's not like just the first draft of a final paper. I can also throw in the chat our graduate faculty advisor. Her name is Renee Tajima Pena. She's also happy to talk with any prospective students about what can go into that writing sample, along with telling you more about our faculty as a whole. So yeah, we because we're Asian American Studies, I think our committee really looks for that alignment, that alignment with research and the interests.
And she's a Academy Award winner or nominee?
Yeah, yes, she's I think she's an Oscar. I know she goes to like the Oscars every year, but she Yeah, for those who don't know, if you study Asian American Studies, she was the director of Who Killed Vincent Chin. So yeah, she's one of our department.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't seen it. It's incredible. And No Mas Bebes, right? She made that as well, I believe. Yeah, so there's a lot of really prolific people in the Asian American Studies program. So yeah, I mean, just Oscar winner or nominee like teaching your classes, which is kind of crazy. Randall Park, he came through in Randall Park,
Yes, he did.
and
I want to.
yeah. So, anyways, all right, cool. Any other questions before we move on? All right, Tiffany, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, I turned off my camera because I was eating lunch. But
What were you eating? What were you eating today?
they have a food truck here at the hospital today, so I'm having nachos.
Nachos.
Yes.
All right, love it. Okay. Yeah, thank you for doing. So we asked Tiffany yesterday if she could come for this. So thank you so much, Tiffany, for doing this on such short notice. I know that the people here will definitely appreciate it. And the people in the future will appreciate it as well. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
All right. So my first question for you is how are Bagel and Lox? How are they doing?
How am I doing?
Bagel and Lox.
Oh, they're good. We're moving next week, so we're just getting ready for the move, but they're good. Those are my two dogs. One I got while I was in grad school, Bagel, and then Lux I got like a year ago to keep Bagel company when I'm at work. So yeah.
All right. That's so funny. Okay, cool. So I think maybe, and I'll turn it over to Justin next, but I think maybe to start things off, so the moment in time the people attending are in right now where they're kind of looking at programs, maybe debating on whether to apply to a joint degree program or not. I don't know how much you remember about your journey, but can you tell us about kind of what your experience was like for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I applied during my fourth year of undergrad. I was a transfer student as an undergrad, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do after I finished school. I feel like social work seemed like, I don't know, the right line of work at the time, and so I wanted to go into mental health. I wanted to become a therapist, and social work is one of the avenues in which you can do that. I think like I don't know, there's some statistic like 80% of like mental health practitioners in California are social workers. So I knew I wanted to go into social work, and then since I was in Asian American Studies and Gender Studies at UCLA as an undergrad, I was already familiar with the Asian American Studies department. I felt like it was a really great way to put together like that really great like critical social theory and praxis. And so ultimately, that's why I decided to choose this program. When I was in the program, at the time we didn't have a professor that was appointed in both departments. So I remember it was pretty rough, like having to navigate both programs and kind of figure out like how am I going to finish both of these in time, and how am I going to finish my final project, or forgot what you call it, but finish that for both programs. And ultimately, my advisors were really supportive. And then at the time, like the staff in both departments were also like really willing to work with me on seeing like which classes will count for both departments. And I finished in 3 years, and during my last year there, I sat on the hiring committee for a dual professor. And so, after I left, the program received two professors. I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah, there are professors now who are jointly appointed in both departments. So that actually is really helpful with kind of it's also helpful with like your project as well, because they kind of can help you. They could like sit on your committee, but also kind of help formulate like what your project will look like, knowing both fields. So yeah.
Thanks, Tiffany. And I think kind of going off of what you're talking about, it's 3 years, and it's a lot to get through for two degrees. And so I think just my question was if you could talk more about like what was it like having to balance like the coursework, and just if you could give us just like a candid response about what it was like having to navigate.
Sure. I know like paying for school was like a big thing that was on my mind throughout the program. So thankfully I was able to get through the program with like a bunch of funding from different sources, but I do say like it's not easy. And so, if you do decide to do the program, you really need to like apply for like every funding opportunity that's available, and like you really need to hustle for that funding. But it is possible. Like me and my roommate was in the Asian American Studies and Master's in Public Health program, and we both got out of the program without taking out any loans. But I know it's really rare, and so I highly advise you to like take up like advantage of every opportunity that's available. So my first year in the program, I took only Asian American Studies courses. I basically finished a bulk of my coursework during my first year, and then my second and third year, I was taking MSW classes while also doing my internships during the school year as well. And then in terms of Asian American Studies, during my second and third year, I was mostly just working on my research project. So I ended up writing a thesis. And so my second year, I was kind of like collecting my data. And then my third year, I was basically with my advisor, the chair of my committee was Grace Hong. And so she made sure that I basically had like my whole thesis written out before I started my third year. That way, like I could finish strong. I could finish my second year internship for the MSW, finish all my coursework for the MSW, and also make sure that I was also done with my Asian American Studies requirements. It's not easy. I have to admit, like putting 4 years into 3 is definitely not easy. But it is possible. It's I think so. With my first year, I got the graduate opportunity, GOFP. Sorry, I don't remember what the acronym stands for anymore. But basically, it was a fellowship that helped pay my tuition for the first year, and then it also gives you like a stipend to help you pay for like your living wages. Like just living in LA is not cheap, right? So if you have to move here, then it helps you like pay for your apartment too. And so I had that to help me cover my first year. And then my second and third year, I received a stipend from LA County Department of Mental Health. And so through that, they helped me pay my tuition. Well, I used that money to help pay for like living expenses. And then basically what happens is after you graduate, you work with them or work with like a contracted agency for 2 years, which is a pretty good deal because it's a regular job, you get paid, right? And then they also help you pay for school. So I had that. And then I also worked on campus at the Graduate Mentorship Research Program, GMRP. And so that came with tuition remission. So that paid my tuition and health insurance. And then I basically used the LA County stipend to help pay my living expenses. And that's how I got through the program. And actually, I learned like later in the program that while you're in the program, you get paid so little that you actually qualify for CalFresh or food stamps. So I would recommend that, you're going to be a social worker, so you should be familiar with the process, right? So you can actually apply for yourself, and you can use it at like Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Costco, anywhere. So yeah, take advantage of these things.
Wow, you were hustling. Oh my goodness, amazing. Yeah, I mean, coming out debt free, that's incredible. I'm curious, like how you handle. So, what did you do? Because there's a final project for both programs. Is there an option, like an oral comp for one, or how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so what I ended up doing is I wrote my MA thesis with Asian American Studies. I made sure that it was related to social welfare. And then that way, to finish the MSW program, I took a comp exam where I basically, I don't know, I don't remember if I talked about or wrote or both, but it was around my second year MSW internship. So.
Do you remember what your project was?
Yeah, so my project was um, basically looking at how second generation Chinese Vietnamese refugees, so basically the children of ethnic Chinese refugees from Vietnam, how they have navigated the social service system for their families growing up. And so I was able to, apply a lot of critical theories from Asian American studies, like looking at like neoliberal, sorry, I can't talk, neoliberal policies, looking at how like the parentification of like young children and how they had to grow up really early to, because sometimes, a family of five could be depending on like a 7-year-old for their access to food stamps, right? And so, yeah, that was what my project looked at.
That's great. Also, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned kind of like the funding portion, because I think maybe one of the benefits of the joint program is that it will open up funding options in both programs.
Yeah.
So yeah, the program that you mentioned, so it's the CalSWAC, the 2-year one?
No, it was like they only did this for 1 year, but it was a DMH stipend for 2 years.
2 years. It was 2 years.
Yes, it was
Okay.
2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one's 1 year now, your second year, but it's still available. And it's 25,000. I think it was 18,000.
Oh yeah.
So they starting basically this year, all the state and county stipends are at 25,000 now. So that's something that you could get. And yeah, as like Tiffany said, you have a job that pays a little bit more than the median MSW salary that is kind of waiting for you. And then for the GOP, we dropped a link in the chat talking about that award. But I mean, basically, you can apply for this particular award, and we both get the award if you're a joint applicant. So that's another nice thing. You kind of increase your odds of being nominated for the award because either department can nominate you for it.
Yeah, like the MSW cohort is much bigger than the Asian American Studies cohort, right? And so I think your chances of getting the GOF-P with Asian American Studies is higher, right? So it increases your chances of getting this fellowship for sure.
Yeah, and I think just to add on, I think to give a little bit more of an idea to like the success of like our GOF-P nominees in the Asian American Studies department, we typically have, about anywhere from like 7 to 10 admits in the MA program in Asian American Studies. We nominate, about half of those students every year, every application round, and we have about like 2 to 3 of those students receive that first year of funding through GOF-P. But most recently, we actually were able to, we had 7 admits in the Asian American Studies program. All 7 of them were nominated and received the 25,000 through GOF-P. So we do have a lot of success, for funding, at least, within Asian American Studies. And then I think also on the similar on the note of funding, we do our best as a department to support you in your first year. So that way you're in Asian American Studies, you're focused on studying and not working the first year, doing your best, whether you're on GOF-P fellowship or the department is funding you. And then the second year we offer you employment opportunities through teaching assistantships to help you get the sphere missions and to help you with income for
yeah. And I was able to work as a TA, a teaching assistant my last quarter in both programs. So it's also possible to like have your classes for MSW, go to internship, and then also be a TA. So if anyone tells you it's not possible, that's not true. You just have to finesse your schedule a little bit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Never leave money on the table, what we tell everyone. Okay, cool. So let's transition over to your job now. Can you tell us all about kind of what you're doing now and how maybe the two worlds overlap, or they feed into what you're doing now?
Yes. Okay, so I'm trying to think of where to start. So after I graduated, I worked with a county contracted agency for 3 years, where I eventually was a supervisor by the time I left. And so I was working, my first year, I was working in the field a lot. I was working with uh, bilingual communities, mostly like Chinese American or Chinese Vietnamese American communities, where I was helping them with like therapy and a lot of case management. So the Asian American Studies was like, it's been really helpful throughout all of my work, because I think it gives me a lot of that critical and like historical context to like why the communities that I'm working with are like in the positions that they're in right now, and like, and how to help them navigate these things. Because, and I think it's really helped me as a therapist to like have a trauma informed lens, because I think that if I didn't have this Asian American Studies background, um, I wouldn't be as critical and knowledgeable as I am now about like, what I'm doing and how I'm doing this, and like what my actions look like within like these systems that we're working in. And so my first year, I was doing a lot of field work. My second and third year at postgrad, I was working with the forensic community. So I was working with folks who have been incarcerated and have been diverted to mental health programs, and given housing instead of staying incarcerated. Um, and so, that was like, I just feel like it's so related, right? Because in Asian American Studies, we obviously learn about like the dynamics of like race, class, right? Um, and like how all of this interacts with like incarceration, and also with like mental health, how like a bunch of these clients that I saw like grew up in extreme poverty, right? And like how that contributes to traumatizing someone and also affecting their mental health as well. So it's like I couldn't, once you go through this, like you can't just shut off one part of your brain and like not know all these things anymore. Like you're just always thinking about, okay, like how are these factors interacting with each other? And so that's why I'm like so grateful that I was able to go through this program, because I don't think I would have had such a rich experience if I just did each one individually. Um, and so after I got licensed, so I'm an LCSW. I moved over to LA County, so I now work at a county hospital. I work in inpatient psychiatry, so I'm a psychiatric social worker in basically like the psych ward, and then so I help with like community linkage, placement, and so this job is like not super clinical. So I'm glad that I got licensed before I came here. And then also to like continue my clinical growth, I also have a private practice, and so my county job is what I do full time, and then after hours, like some evenings, I see private practice clients over telehealth. And so I want to say like one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is that now like a lot like telehealth is like accepted everywhere, and like a lot of practitioners are like seeing clients from their own home. And so you no longer need to like rent an office space and like pay all those fees, because you can just do it from home now. So it's a lot easier. And like Oliver was saying, there is a shortage in therapists. And so actually all my clients that I see through private practice are from Northern California, through Kaiser, and like they pay higher rates. And so because there's such a shortage, so this is actually a really good time to go into this field. Yeah. And it helps to have this Asian American Studies background too, because a lot of my clients choose me because of that.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Just I'm curious though. So you're working with like Asian American communities within mental health. So I'm curious what kind of changes you've seen, maybe for the better, in terms of that specific community and kind of mental health and behavioral health, and where do you see like more improvement possible within that world?
Yeah, I think that during the pandemic, a lot of these acts of resistance that we saw, like worldwide, I think have really like pushed a lot of like service organizations, like direct service organizations, to really think about like how class and race really plays into the daily lives of our clients. And so, um, of course, things can always be improved. At the same time, I do think that we're more open to talking about race now, and also even when we're working within like Asian American studies, like Asian American community, right? Normally, because a lot of times when you talk about social welfare and when you're gonna take these courses, um, a lot of the material will focus on like Black and Brown communities, right? And that makes total sense, right? Because of the way that our society has been structured. And so, um, you know, having this Asian American studies background allows me to like not only understand how to like empathize and be an ally to Black and Brown communities, right? But also like how do Asian Americans fit within this narrative, right? Without saying like, that, and also acknowledging like, yes, these are the ways within how like Asian Americans have benefited off of certain things, right? But then also how like, this is this larger structure of white supremacy that's really like pitting all these communities of color against each other, and like, making us fight for resources, right? And so understanding all of this, I think, has been really helpful. And so I see this field of work really like working with Asian American communities. I do see it becoming more open to like solidarity with like Black and Brown folks. During this, like while I was doing all this work, there was a group that was formed called like Black and API Solidarity, and it was a group for youth, and I participated in that. And so I think there's a lot more conversations now, and I think that I'm really grateful for this like solidarity work that we're building.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So we have about 15 minutes left. Feel free to ask questions if anyone has any questions. You can drop it in the chat, raise your hand, or just unmute yourself. Any questions? There we go. Maylin.
Hi, Tiffany. I just was curious about your application process to both programs, if you had any things that you remember that stuck out as being really helpful for your application, or advice that you might have.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, so I can't recall too much of like the application process. I do remember that I put a lot of importance to finding good letter recommendations, like letter writers, and then also my writing sample. And so I think the writing sample is going to be really important for your Asian American Studies application, and then also the letters of recommendation will be important for both departments. So I think I ended up asking like 2 former professors and someone who supervised me for one of my internships during undergrad. But yeah, that was about it. And also like the statement of purpose and what's the other one called? The personal statement. I made sure that I was able to kind of show like why it's gonna be helpful to be in both programs, right? Like how I was gonna use both programs in the future as well.
Thank you. One other question was, you've done so much in the time since you graduated, really spanning a lot of jobs and skill sets and communities. And so I'm wondering how much of that was based on skills that you gained in programs and how much of it is you using what you learned in the program to pursue such diverse opportunities.
Sorry, I'm on my work computer, so the emails keep coming through and it's making noise. But yeah, so that's a really good question. I want to say that actually I got my first job after graduating through a alum of the Asian American Studies MSW program. So we used to have, I don't know if we still have them, but we used to have like alumni mixers. And so I met someone who graduated like many years before me. And then when it was about time to graduate, I remember asking like, hey, do you know of any places that have openings? And she was like, actually, our agency has an opening. And then she didn't participate in my interview process, obviously, because she knew me, but I got hired with that agency. And so I think that just like being a part of these two programs separately, I think you're exposed to a lot, like not only through your coursework, but then also Asian American Studies will like really pushes for you to like be a part of the community and like understand like, you know, the history of Asian American Studies and like how community organizing is like a big part of how Asian American Studies came about, right? So I think through the Asian American Studies program, there's a lot of opportunities for community work. And so that was really helpful. And then through the MSW, I think during your first year, I don't know what they're called. I don't remember what they're called, but you have kind of like field trips. So like you'll, even if it's not a field that you're interested in or planning on going into, you'll be exposed to it, right? So like I remember like I was never planning on working, like I didn't plan on having my thesis around social services, right? But what happened was during like my first year of the MSW, we took a trip to the Department of Social Services, which is the DPSS office, which is like where people apply for general relief and food stamps and Medi-Cal. And while I was there, I was kind of noticing how like, oh wow, like there's a bunch of these families here and they have to be here all day just to get their benefits. And like a lot of these parents, you know, don't have someone here to translate for them, so they rely on their child to do it, right? And so that's kind of how it got me thinking about my project. And so yeah, through both programs separately, you'll be exposed to a lot more like outside of campus and out in the community as well. So sorry, I don't know if that answered your question, but that really did help me with like what I ended up doing afterwards.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I had a quick question. I was curious, I don't know if you mentioned this already, but if you could share the area of concentration that you were in within the MSW program, and then also what field work or internships you had the opportunity to do during time there and how that shaped your experience.
Yeah, definitely. So okay, so my concentration was actually social and economic justice. So like Oliver said, like you don't have to, you can be in any concentration and in the dual program. And so I think because I went into clinical work, you know, I think some people thought like I was gonna do the mental health concentration, but actually you can still take electives, right? That are like you can take an elective about the DSM. And so you can still take like clinical electives and be in the social and economic justice concentration, because I just felt like it made more sense. Like that aligned a lot with what I was learning in Asian American Studies. And then through my internship, I was getting that clinical experience. And then through these electives, I was also getting that training. And so my first year internship, so I don't know if y'all are already familiar with this, but for your first year internship, you get placed. You don't get to choose it, right? So they try to place you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver, but they try to place you in a field where like you don't have a lot of experience already. And so like I made it clear that I have worked with children in the past. And so for my first year internship, I was placed at a adult daycare facility for adults with like varying degrees of memory loss. And I want to say like that made me more interested in working with the older population. And then my second year internship. So for your second year, you get to choose 2 agencies or 2 internship sites that you want to apply for or interview with. And then basically what happens is like they rank you and then you rank which one you want. And then you match up, right? And so my second year, I was placed with a outpatient LA County Department of Mental Health clinic. It was in Long Beach. It's called Long Beach Asian Pacific Islander Family Mental Health Center. So again, I was like always finding ways where like I can still integrate these 2 fields, right? So like, yeah, I'm doing clinical work and like social work, but I still want to work with like, you know, API population. And so like through that, I got the clinical training, and also I was familiar with documentation. So like when you interview for jobs or apply for jobs, especially in like clinical work after you graduate, they're all going to ask you like, are you familiar with DMH documentation, right? And so that's why I think it's important to know like if you want to eventually get licensed and become a clinician, one of your 2 internships should at least be in a clinical setting so you get that experience.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? Madison, Alyssa, Oliver. Do you have any other questions, Justin?
No, I think those were all really good questions. So yeah, I think I'm good.
Yeah, so I mean I can ask Tiffany if she's okay with me giving out her email later, and if you want to get in touch with her about her experience. But man, she's done it all, so it's a great resource. But I think one thing that she mentioned was really important is that when you're filling out like your statement of purpose, when you talk about how you want to combine the degrees, I think it's important that both programs see their discipline within your statement of purpose, because that's the number one. I would say that's probably the number one thing that leads us to deny an applicant, is that we don't see the social welfare relevance within that. So I think that was a really good point and something worth thinking about when you're writing that statement of purpose. Okay, okay. Last chance. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, yeah, we're a little bit under time, but I think I learned a lot. I love doing these because I always learn so much. So thank you again, Tiffany and Justin, for helping us make this happen. Yeah, do you have any other final words, Justin?
Again, just feel free to reach out to myself. Happy to answer any questions that were not answered in this this hour. So yeah, and just best of luck with those applications.
Any other last minute advice, Tiffany? Anything else you want to finish with?
No, just good luck with everything. It's not easy. The journey is not easy, but I do promise that it is worth it in the end.
Cool, perfect. Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.